You're listening to WMPG 90.9 Gorham, Portland, Southern Maine Community Radio from USM. Live from the Orion Cygnus arm of the Milky Way galaxy, this is Scientifically Speaking, a weekly half-hour program devoted to elegant curiosities. I am one of your hosts, Sarah Chang, and joining me, as always, is Bernie Rhyme, DJ Star Watcher. How are you, Bernie?
Yes, hi, Sarah. Very good. Thank you.
Bernie's our professor of the astronomy lab here at USM and our local protector of the night skies. Reach out to us at WMPGScientificallySpeaking@gmail.com or head over to WMPG.org to find the last 5 weeks of archives of all of your favorite shows, including this one. Bernie, could you let our listeners know what is up in the night sky for this coming week?
Yes, certainly. So this is Friday, April 28th. We have a waxing gibbous moon. It was just first quarter on the 27th, so it just passed first quarter, so we can see that in the daytime. The days keep getting longer, but like 3 minutes a day, so the sunrise now is at 5:38 in the morning and doesn't set till 7:40 at night. So summer's not here yet, but we're about halfway into spring. May Day actually is the halfway mark. And then we've lost the planet Mercury in the evening sky, but you can still see Venus and Mars in the evening sky in Taurus, and then you can see Saturn in the morning sky in Capricorn. And you might still be able to catch a few leftover Lyrid meteors. They peaked about a week ago on Earth Day, the 22nd. They always peak the same day as Earth Day. So, yep, so that's pretty much it for this week.
If you couldn't take notes fast enough, you can also check out the monthly What's Up column in the Portland Press Herald.
Yes.
Thanks for that, Bernie.
Sure.
Well, welcome to another episode of Scientifically Speaking here on WMPG. Today, we are so thrilled to introduce you to our special guest, Sarah Long, who's a meteorologist over at WMTW. And she actually joined us for a pretty lengthy conversation, and we are able to bring to you a couple basically segments of Scientifically Speaking, where for this episode, we talked a lot about what is precipitation and how that is measured and talked about and from a meteorology perspective. And also we talk a little bit about very strange weather events that have happened recently and this past season. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. Can I ask a little bit about your time now at the station?
Sure.
And what that's like? So you talk about how you all have the same data, the 20 or so meteorologists in the Portland area, but a lot of how you maybe present or interpret that data is based on experience and your teams, et cetera. Where exactly are you getting raw data from Mount Washington, or where is this coming from, and what are you using, and what is the size of your weather team that's working with you?
Yeah, so we have a team of 5 people right now, which is amazing.
Wow.
That is the biggest weather team that I have been on. And it took us a while to get up to that point of 5 people. And so I just love the people that we have brought on.
And they're all technically meteorologists?
They're all meteorologists, okay. Yeah. So going on a tangent, which you'll notice I do quite a bit, not all on-air weather presenters are degreed meteorologists. However, you will find that in New England, they mostly are. Mm-hmm. Once you get out to... We always joke about San Diego weather, or certainly places where it's
it's always the same.
Exactly. You don't. I think maybe news directors would rather just have somebody that looks good and presents well, and that might work for them. But in New England, where the weather is so changeable, and so many people depend on the weather as well, working outdoors, and of course, as we can see. The spring even, it can change in the matter of minutes. And so I think that's why you'll find in the Northeast that we're degreed meteorologists. Okay, so there's 5 of us. Where are we getting our data from? it's actually very easy for folks to get the same data that we use online. A lot of it is from the government. We are getting, so I talked about the observatory doing their hourly observations. They're contracted by the National Weather Service to send those hourly observations in. The Weather Service is also, and our office here in Southern Maine is in Gray, the National Weather Service in Gray. They are also collecting data from several other observation sites around the region. And so that's where we're getting our current data from. The National Weather Service is also very important in the way that they're the ones who issue any watches, warnings, advisories. So if you hear about us talk about a winter storm warning or a severe thunderstorm warning, that comes from the National Weather Service, and we're actually required to share that with our viewers. Obviously, that's why we're there, and we're there to keep you safe, but that's an FCC requirement, I believe, for us to share that. And it's great that we've been able to hold on to the Weather Service being the only outfit that is actually issuing those warnings. There have been some private companies, some of the larger ones like AccuWeather that I'm sure some of you have heard of, that have tried to sort of sneak in, trying to have their own warning system. And so far that has not really made much ground, which is good. So that way we're all on the same page, because our job really is to keep the public informed and safe and not confused about, sort of any severe weather or impactful weather that's coming their way. And so if you had every meteorologist or every television station being able to issue their own watches and warnings, it would be mayhem.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Weather Service is important, especially in that way as well. And so really they're an extension of our team. So I talk about the 5 meteorologists that we have on our team, but the Weather Service, we also work closely with them. We're in touch with them throughout the day through chat rooms and, certainly any updates that they might have for us. And then in terms of the forecast modeling, there are different websites that massage the data to, look certain ways, and you might be drawn to the colors or the graphics that one of these websites uses. But it all comes from those forecast models that, again, are run by the government. So we have a few here in the States. We have the European. There's a Japanese model there. I mean, the list goes on. So it's actually pretty accessible to the public, which I think is a great thing. But with the advent of social media, of course, the problem is when somebody puts themselves out there as a meteorologist, but isn't one. And that works against us keeping a consistent message for the public.
You still have weather people that, like citizen-type weather people that have a little station and they can add to it? You have those?
Yeah, we love our weather spotters. We have quite a growing group of weather spotters, and they make our job so much easier. They're our eyes and our ears out in the field. So I'm sitting in an office that's right off of the news studio with no windows. We do have webcams, so that's good. I feel like I've got a window over Portland Harbor, right? But no windows. And so here we have this group of people who are weather enthusiasts who report their some of them report every day what their temperature and wind speed and humidity is, but they're especially useful during storms, in terms of, are you getting sleet? Are you getting freezing rain? And what does that mean for areas around you? And how is the forecast unfolding? So having that ground truth is so important to what we do.
Yeah. Sarah, could I ask you a very important question that has befuddled me and many of my friends for pretty much all our lives?
Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
The pressure.
So when it says that it's raining and there is an 80% chance of precipitation, what does that mean?
That means over the area. And so it could, it could be raining where you are, but not next door, or like not in, the town 1 over. So we do get 100% precip sometimes, but oftentimes you'll see, even at 90%, you're getting rain outside your window. You talked with somebody across town who is not, or you get rain and then it stops for a little bit. So it's really, if I encourage people, if you're going to look at that number, just know the higher it is, the better chance that you'll see some rain that day. Yeah. But it's sort of convoluted. It's really not the metric that I would use if you're trying to figure out what your forecast is.
Yeah, because when I ask Google, what's the weather today? And it says it'll be rainy today. I have to ask, how much will it rain today to get a sense of like the quantity? Because like you were saying, it's like that number is really describing the coverage.
Right.
I don't have a sense of how long it's going to rain today or
how much. Are you going to get a quarter of an inch of rain, or that's certainly very different than if you're going to end up with 2 inches of rainfall. Yeah. Very different scenarios. So the best thing I can say is tune into your local meteorologist who will be able to tell you all of those answers.
Yeah. If you had a preferred metric, what would you replace it with?
Oh, goodness.
Or would you use multiple?
I think I'd use multiple, and I think that's why the local forecast, I think, still rules. And I'm not just saying that because I want folks to tune in, but truly, like if I'm traveling somewhere, I'm like everybody else. I will look at my phone and see what the app says, right? And, is it going to be a week of sun? I was just down in D.C. for the cherry blossoms, and ahead of time, I sort of looked ahead just to, like, give myself an idea, like, are we going to have to deal with rain or not, right? But then once I want to know specifics, then I find a local meteorologist, and then I know what I'm looking for, right? So it happened to be beautiful weather while we were there, but if on one of the days the weather app or just my phone weather, I guess it's the app, right? I didn't download it, but it's just whatever comes with Google anyway. If it was saying like it's gonna be raining on Tuesday, and I wanted to make plans around that, that's when I would look for a local forecast. So the apps have their place, certainly, in giving you just an overview. But if you really want to make plans, I would seek something that's a little bit more specific.
And that'll be especially important with the eclipse coming up.
Yes,
yeah,
we were just doing stories about that. Yeah,
yeah, because I cover a lot. I do a whole lab on that with my students because I went to see the one in 2017. I drove to Idaho to see it.
Oh.
Yeah, so now one's coming to Maine. People don't have to drive far, but they can't see it from Portland.
Right.
Some people think they can see it from here, but they can't.
Yeah, they can't. And unfortunately, we were looking at the stats for, it's going to be over like Baxter and that area. Yep. And April is a pretty cloudy month up there.
I know. Yeah.
That has us really bummed out. Yeah. And if you think, so on the 1 year, looking out from a year this April, of course, we had a crystal clear weekend.
Perfect day, April 8th.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect night. Yeah. I mean, not a cloud to be seen, right? What are the chances we're going to get that 2 years in a row? Fingers crossed. Fingers
probably
crossed.
Less than 5%.
Right. Yeah. So, I am not looking forward to forecasting that week. I think it's going to be very stressful.
I was going to say we should invite you on.
Yeah, no, I totally will. I totally will.
We'll invite you back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So can we pivot a little bit to some of the extreme weather events that we've been seeing? So we were talking a little bit about precipitation. And Bernie, I think you were particularly interested in the recent rains in Florida.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so what happened to cause that? It was not a tornado or a hurricane.
Did anybody forecast that?
So interestingly, I wasn't watching the local stations. I don't think anybody forecasted it. But after the fact, even here in Maine, I was sitting, our chief meteorologist and I were talking about it. And I was saying, I wonder if any of the forecast models actually did even even just forecast an uptick in rainfall, more than the others. And so we were looking, there was one particular model, although it's a short-term model, so it still would have been just within a few hours. You'd have to be looking at it. But anyway, all that to say that nobody really knew that was going to happen. And it was an anomaly. I don't think that we'll see that again, certainly not in that same area. But here's what was happening. So we had a storm in the Gulf of Mexico, and that was potentially, at least the Hurricane Center was watching it to see if it was going to be our first tropical storm. Exactly. Yeah, it starts June 1st. Yeah, June 1st. Yeah. And so I think a lot of eyes were on whether or not that was going to strengthen, because of the flow of the wind direction, just the amount of moisture that was around. It was sort of all of the ingredients came together, and of course dropped those 26 inches over Fort Lauderdale. It's not something that I would never go on air, I think, and say, and this is the discussion we were having in the weather office, even if the models said you're going to get 20 inches of rain in Portland in an afternoon, would I go on air and say, we're going to get 20 inches of rain in Portland?
It's almost unbelievable.
I wouldn't. Because the idea of that happening is just absurd, right? Yeah. And so what you do is you go on air and say, listen, there's a lot of moisture out there. And we are watching this storm, and here's what could happen, and this is what you need to be prepared for. But certainly, that was...
Was the pressure really low, too? Did it wind up at all?
I don't know what the pressure got down to, but that was over along the Gulf Coast that folks were watching, with being concerned about that storm. So it was just the way that the wind and the moisture was wrapping around and coming up along the East Coast of Florida. And just unbelievable. And of course, you hate to see it because you hate to see the sort of aftermath of something like that. But from a scientific perspective, it was just fascinating. And I have no doubt that there will be all kinds of people studying this for their PhDs.
No, that's right.
And I'll be interested to see what they come up with.
Wait, so that model that did predict a little bit of an uptick, how much did it predict an
it
amount?
actually predicted right around 20 inches.
Oh, wow.
It did, yeah. But it was within, like I said, I think,
couple hours.
A few hours. And so at that point...
it's too late?
Well, I don't know if it's that it's too late, but you don't put all your eggs in that basket, right? But maybe someday we will be certain enough in the models that we'll be able to do that. So, but that's the great thing about this field, I think. There's still so much to be learned.
Yeah.
So much.
If you get better quality satellites and all that. And
yeah.
So what's the prediction for the hurricane season? Since it's
goodness.
Since we're almost on that. We almost had a hurricane.
This is like asking what my seasonal forecast is. I actually, there are some people that really dig into that stuff and really enjoy that. I like to let it unfold. 8 days at a time.
What's
our 8-day forecast?
Do you have a prediction for the first name?
Oh, actually, they already have the list.
Oh, they already have.
Yeah, so this is really cool. This is good trivia for you, right? They actually have, it's from the World Meteorological Organization. They put out the list 6 years at a time. And so we already know for the next several years what those names are going to be. And they'll retire after 6 years, they start using some of the previous names, except if a storm is deadly enough or impactful enough economically, they'll retire that name.
So are they going to retire Ian, the Florida one?
I believe they did.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And, certainly you think of like Katrina and Hurricane Bob and things like we'll never have another one of those because, one and done.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Wait, was there really a Hurricane Bob?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It hit here in Maine.
Yep.
When was that?
90s?
Oh.
Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, I think so.
Gosh, I feel like I should...
I guess in my lifetime, Andrew was the big one for
yeah.
me.
Yeah, Andrew, that was Florida too,
Yeah. Hurricane Bob, let's see. Yeah, 90s, early 90s.
Oh,
91.
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, is that one that just went up to like New England?
I'd have to look at the track to remember, but no, it hit Maine as I believe maybe a category 1.
Oh, wow.
Or New England as a category 1.
Okay.
Yeah, we can cut this part out
Yeah.
if I'm not being.
No worries. So what can we also we have been experiencing a very warm winter, I think.
Yeah.
And last year was I felt like last year was pretty warm too. Actually, every year since I've been here, it's been like warmer and warmer and warmer.
It feels like that
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Are you actually seeing that?
We are. We're seeing a warming trend over the long term. So we might have, like this past winter wasn't our warmest winter on record, but it was, I believe, in the top 5, if not the top 3. The things that go into my head and write out, so I'd have to go back and look that up. But what we're seeing is a trend of warmer winters, and especially, and this is going to be something that people are going to have to adapt to. We're especially seeing thaws more often during the winter months, and we're losing our snowpack more often before then building it up again with another storm. And so that is going to have a major impact on all kinds of things, whether you're in the outdoor sports industry, and certainly with I would imagine entomologists would have some things to say about that, right? Like you're thawing things out when things are supposed to be or have stayed frozen historically. We've seen the problem with the ticks, where you don't get cold enough weather to kill off some of the population. So it's really that thawing in between that also will actually impact our drought. So in the springtime, after a cold winter and we accumulate all the snow, there's a very slow melt that goes on, and that helps to feed our rivers and streams, and also feeds our groundwater. But what's happening when we lose our snowpack, if the ground is still frozen underneath, all of that runs off. And so you don't get the benefit of that going into the ground. Your groundwater starts to suffer, those levels start to suffer. And so it's all of these sort of intricacies of things that I think a lot of people don't think about. They think about, again, like there's not enough snow to go snowmobiling, or I can't go snowshoeing, in Greater Portland. But also it's a big problem for groundwater. It's a problem for animals,
plants.
Yeah, plants as well. Yeah, of course we're seeing things blooming earlier that have typically bloomed in the past, and much later, and all of that has an impact. Yeah.
The ice being out of the lakes earlier too, and stuff.
Yeah. The ice out has been remarkably earlier, and even these past couple of years, we have had several derbies that have been canceled. We used to have ice fishing derbies every winter, and we're seeing those canceled a little bit more often. Not to say that next year we won't have a nice solid ice pack on the lakes, but I think it's going to be more often that we see that we aren't able to do those things, because we're just not getting cold enough.
Yeah, I'm like seeing it with smelting and not being able to go because they can't sustain on a river.
Yeah, and the thing is, we'll still have some cold winters, and we will also probably still have some snowfall records that are broken down the road, because with a warmer winter, we're seeing more moisture in the atmosphere. And when we talk about, this winter was warmer than normal, well, that can still be below freezing. And so we're not talking about necessarily getting less snow, but more impactful snowfalls, with heavier totals are certainly likely.
Yeah. So what was the deal with all the atmospheric rivers out in California?
Oh, yeah.
13 of them or something?
Yeah. Coming right off of the Pacific. And I mean, it's just what it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
Like a river above the surface in the atmosphere, and all of that moisture being fed. And that, with climate change, we're going to see a lot more extremes like that. So more moisture ending up in one area, less moisture in drought conditions in other areas, and just harder to predict.
So what are the conditions to make those rivers? And how come so many happen all at once and then nothing for 10?
Just like we have patterns in the North Atlantic that help to drive our forecast, there are certainly patterns in the Pacific. And when the right things set up in the right way, you get those rivers. Just like our warming that we've just had, that's typically a pattern that we see in the summer with a Bermuda high. And so that's something that's uniquely East Coast. And so that setup this spring was early, and seeing those record warm temperatures as a result. So, it's interesting as meteorologists around the country, you get so used to a certain area that you're forecasting. And I've been lucky enough to only have to forecast in New England. I say that, of course, other people would be mortified if they thought of forecasting in New England because it's so changeable. But I think that's what makes it great. It's just exciting. But the idea that as meteorologists, if we move somewhere else in the country, like there's a whole different vernacular, there are different patterns. It's like learning a whole new part of the science.
Yeah. So out west, do meteorologists have anything to do with earthquakes? Is that completely separate?
So it is separate, but it sort of goes back to the astronomy piece. We become sort of the earth science person at these stations that we work at. So anything that happens that has to do with the earth or the sky, apparently, right? They immediately come to us. And so, I don't know, a lot about earthquakes. We are the ones that they come to and say, hey, has the Geological Survey, said anything? People are reporting, hearing or feeling things, shaking. And we're sort of looked at as the experts to come up with the answer.
You're supposed to know that, of course.
Exactly.
You have been listening to Scientifically Speaking here on WMPG with myself, Bernie, and Sarah Long. Stay tuned for Democracy Now! And from your favorite nerds, here's our joke of the day. How do meteorologists go up a mountain?
I don't know.
Balloon.
They climb it.
Climate change. Okay,
I have to say,
climate.
It's all in your delivery, Sarah.
Yeah, right.
It is all in your delivery.